We're talking about your father, right? Now, you're going to say guilty or not guilty. What do you say?
One thing you can't fake is a smile. And she had a genuine one, honestly.
He didn't become famous for harsh sentences. He became famous for listening. The judge millions called the kindest man in court left one final request, and the story behind it will change how you think about justice. From a $20 ticket to a choice that steadied a family. His courtroom turned small mistakes into second chances. Today, we're unpacking the moment that defined him, the message he chose to leave behind, and the quiet rule he followed that any court could copy.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. My name is Castor Salami.
You can leave the hat on if you want.
This isn't a tribute, it's a blueprint, and it starts with a stranger who expected a fine and walked out with something else. On August 20th, 2025, the message came from the source that mattered most, his own account. Judge Frank Caprio passed away at 88 after a long, hard fight with pancreatic cancer, a battle he had shared with the same open-hearted honesty that made strangers feel like neighbors. The statement was simple and dignified. No spectacle, no spin.
Let me see the hat. 101st Airborne Division, Your Honor.
101st Airborne?
Yeah, I was in it.
Just a final note from a life spent treating people as people. Within minutes, timelines filled with courtroom clips and thank you notes from ordinary drivers, parents, and students who remembered the day a judge chose to hear them out before handing anything down. National outlets confirmed the news, and Rhode Island responded the way communities honor their best, with tributes that felt personal. It was the end of a chapter, but not the end of his influence. Because the real story here isn't just the fact of his passing.
So what do you do in that situation? You don't give up. You don't give up. So I tell you.
It's why millions cared. How did a municipal court become a window into a different kind of justice? And what did he leave behind that others can actually use? That's where we go next. Before the cameras, there was a kid from Providence who learned that rules matter, and so do the people living under them. He grew up in a neighborhood where everyone knew your name and your father's reputation followed you down the block. That taught him two things early. Accountability isn't optional and dignity isn't negotiable.
He was known as the nicest judge in the world. But behind the robe, Frank Caprio.
He worked, studied at night, and took the long road through law school, not because it was glamorous, but because it was possible. He taught civics, shook hands at community meetings, and listened more than he spoke. The habit stuck. When he finally put on the robe, he brought the neighborhood with him. He didn't treat a traffic line like a conveyor belt. He treated it like a series of lives arriving with context. A single mother late on fines wasn't a file number. A veteran with a parking ticket wasn't a headline.
Former Judge Frank Caprio dies at 88. Beloved former Judge Frank Caprio has died.
He asked short questions, waited for real answers, and let common sense do quiet work. That's how his courtroom found its tone. Firm when needed, open when it mattered, always human. The approach wasn't a performance, it was muscle memory. Built from classrooms, kitchen tables, and front steps. And once people felt it, word spread. That's when a local court started to look like something bigger. Next, you'll see how that small room turned into a global lesson. One clip, one story, 1 second chance at a time.
Because you're in a position of power doesn't mean you have to use it against the people who don't have power. I think you have to, it's a balance.
Most courts move like assembly lines. His didn't. He started every case the same way, by asking for the person's story. Not a speech, not a performance, just the truth in their own words. A late payment wasn't just failure to appear. It was a second job, a sick parent, a bus that didn't come. He weighed the rule and the reason side by side, and people felt it the second they stepped up. He kept the questions short and the tone even.
What a wonderful feeling it is to be back in court.
What happened? What can you manage? No theatrics. He looked for effort, not excuses. If someone was trying, working, studying, caring for kids, he found a way to match the law with mercy. If someone was gaming the system, he could be steel. The point wasn't to be nice. The point was to be fair in the way real life is messy. That's why unusual outcomes kept happening. Fines cut to something survivable. Payment plans that didn't push a family off a cliff.
It is with profound sadness that I share the news that my father, Judge Frank Caprio, passed away today.
Tickets dismissed when a mistake wasn't the person's alone. He treated discretion like a responsibility, not a spotlight. And it turned a municipal courtroom into a place people trusted. Word spread. Not because of a marketing plan, but because people walked out feeling seen. And when that feeling reached a camera, everything changed. The small room on a city block was about to speak to the world. The cameras didn't change him. They revealed him.
Know what the future holds. I don't know. So I tell you, enjoy.
A local program started sharing his hearings, and what should have been background TV turned into must-watch moments. People weren't tuning in for gotchas or gavel slams. They were watching for something rare. A judge who treated a 10-minute traffic case like a real conversation. One clip at a time, his courtroom left the city and started traveling, first across the state, then across the country, then everywhere a phone could scroll. The formula was disarmingly simple.
Sometimes in life, we take things for granted. We have a nice life. We have a great position.
Keep the law in focus. Keep the person in frame. Ask what really happened. When a teenager nervously explained a mistake he didn't perform, he listened. When a caregiver showed up exhausted, he didn't posture. He asked what would keep their life intact. That steadiness cut through the noise of courtroom television. It wasn't spectacle, it was relief. As the audience grew, the stories did the work. A parent leaving with tears and a plan instead of shame. A veteran who walked in bracing for punishment and walked out with dignity.
Really sad news. The real Frank Caprio, that is the judge that everyone knows, I'm sure.
Clips passed between friends, then families, then strangers who needed a reminder that authority could still be human. The show became a mirror reflecting something viewers wanted to believe about the system. That fairness isn't weakness and mercy doesn't cancel accountability. The fame never seemed to pull him off center. He kept the bench small, the questions short, the mercy measured. The bigger the platform got, the quieter the ego stayed.
Where are you from?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia?
Yeah.
How long have you been here?
16 years.
16?
And that's why the next part mattered even more. When illness arrived, he modeled the same honesty and courage he demanded in court. He never hid behind statements. When the diagnosis came in December 2023, he spoke directly to the people who'd been watching him for years. The message was candid and calm. He said what the doctors found. He asked for prayers. He promised to meet the fight the same way he met a crowded docket, one day at a time with patience and purpose.
This is how Judge Frank Caprio died. On August 20th, 2025, the world said goodbye to one of the kindest.
Updates followed in the same voice, not medical lectures, not drama. Short notes about treatment, gratitude for the team around him, a thank you to viewers who kept writing in. He talked about good days and harder days without turning the illness into a brand. It felt less like a broadcast and more like a conversation at a kitchen table. That tone mattered. Families facing their own battles saw a blueprint. Be honest, stay kind, keep going.
Breaking news. America has just lost one of its most beloved icons. Judge Frank Caprio has passed away.
He reminded people that courage isn't loud. It's showing up, telling the truth, and asking for help when you need it. The same principles he used on the bench. Hear the story, respect the person, tailor the response, were now guiding his own life. The audience answered back. Messages landed from students he'd once encouraged and from strangers who only knew him through 10-minute clips. They shared fines he'd reduced, words he'd said that stuck, and how those moments changed a month's budget or a kid's confidence.
Last year, I asked you to pray for me. And
for many, those memories became the fuel they offered back to him. You gave us mercy. We're sending it back. As treatment stretched on, his posts stayed steady. He didn't pretend the road was easy. He also didn't let the illness define him. He highlighted the helpers, pointed to faith and family, and kept returning to one theme: choose compassion even when you're tired. That line landed because it came from someone who had practiced it under pressure in public for decades. Near the end, he recorded a final message from a hospital room.
Judge Frank Caprio has passed away at the age of 88 after a long battle with pancreatic cancer. His death marks the end of...
The voice was softer, but the outlook hadn't moved. He asked for prayers and thanked people for standing with him. No self-pity, no resentment. Just a quiet instruction to keep being decent to each other. It felt less like a farewell and more like a handoff. The next morning, the announcement arrived. He had passed at 88 after a long fight. Grief hit fast, but so did direction. His last request wasn't abstract. It was a daily decision: meet people where they are and leave them better than you found them. And that's exactly what the world tried to do in the hours that followed.
No wonder Judge Frank Caprio tightly wrapped his body in a blanket in his last video before passing away. 3 unnoticed details had already indicated.
Tributes didn't just recount episodes, they described actions. Which brings us to what happened next, when an entire state, and then a nation, answered his message in unison. What began as a single confirmation turned into a river of gratitude. People who had stood at his bench years ago wrote about the moment a fine didn't break a paycheck. A mother remembered him asking about bus schedules before deciding what she could realistically afford.
The internet's favorite judge, Frank Caprio, has sadly passed away at the young age of 88.
A college student said the only reason he made it to graduation was because a payment plan kept him from choosing between tuition and tickets. None of these posts were dramatic. They were ordinary, and that was the power. Mercy had met real life and made it breathable. Colleagues described a different angle. Court officers talked about the morning briefings where he reminded them that speed is not the same as justice. Clerks recalled the tiny rituals, greeting each person by name.
A book later this year. He posted this video to his TikTok account just 19 hours ago, asking people to pray for...
Pausing when someone looked lost, explaining the why behind a decision so the law didn't feel like a wall. Defense attorneys and prosecutors, who rarely agree on anything, said they trusted his process because he listened first and ruled second. The tributes spread far beyond Rhode Island. Teachers stitched his clips into civics lessons to show that rules and empathy can coexist. Pastors and community leaders referenced him in weekend messages about humility in authority. Social feeds filled with 10-minute snapshots that felt like parables.
Setback. Unfortunately, just 17 hours after that video was posted to TikTok, Frank Caprio's family announced
a veteran who left with dignity, a young driver who left with a plan, a caregiver who left with time. Each story was small on its own. Together, they formed a map of how systems can treat people. Public figures weighed in, but the tone stayed grounded. The posts that traveled the farthest sounded personal. He listened to my father. He asked about my kid. He changed the month my family had. Even officials who wrote formal statements borrowed that language.
Just 17 hours after that video was posted to TikTok, Frank Caprio's family announced that he had passed away.
They didn't laud a television personality. They praised a neighbor who happened to wear a robe. Inside the courthouse, staff shared what cameras never saw: the quick check-in after a hard case, the gentle pivot when a person froze at the podium, the way he would rephrase a question so someone didn't feel trapped. These weren't grand gestures. They were micro decisions, repeated 1,000 times until they felt like culture. That's why the grief felt unusual. People weren't mourning a celebrity so much as a standard they wanted to keep.
The nicest judge in the world has just been killed, and the truth behind it is darker than anyone imagined. For years, Judge Frank Caprio was...
First responders and service members circulated the same 2 or 3 clips to rookies. "This is what respect looks like under pressure," the captions read. Not softness, steadiness, not leniency, proportionality. When viewers argued in the comments about whether he went too easy, the counter-argument always returned to the same point. He didn't erase accountability. He calibrated it to the person's reality. The legal community offered something else: credibility. Judges and lawyers who value predictability.
I can charge you $50 or I can charge you nothing. What should I charge?
$50.
50, okay.
Acknowledge that discretion can be dangerous in the wrong hands. But they said he showed how to anchor it. Ask clear questions. Make the rationale transparent. And leave people with steps they can actually complete. Tributes like that didn't just honor a life. They endorsed a method. Meanwhile, people who never stood in his courtroom still felt connected. A grandmother who binge-watched the show during chemo wrote that his calm got her through long afternoons.
I don't drive that fast, Judge. I'm 96 years old and I drive slowly and I only drive...
A delivery driver said he kept the clips running between stops because they reset his day. Strangers used phrases you reserve for family: trusted, steady, kind. When audiences reach for family words to describe a public figure, something rare has happened. What unified the messages was the absence of cynicism. No one framed his kindness as a brand. They pointed to outcomes: a family that stayed afloat, a student who didn't miss a semester, a parent who felt seen. The applause honored the feeling people carried home more than the moment that went viral.
He gained a huge following online for his empathy. So this news will no doubt be met with sadness from many that you...
And that's the lesson worth keeping. All of it leads to the same question. Why did his approach work when so many courtrooms feel cold? The answer isn't mystical. It's a handful of habits anyone in authority can practice. That's where we go next. The anatomy of a method that made accountability livable and why it's the piece of his legacy most worth copying. What he did looked simple. It wasn't. He built a repeatable rhythm that turned judgment into problem solving, and once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it.
I woke up one day and they told me I had pancreatic cancer. Wonderful life.
First, he started with the person, not the paperwork. A name, a glance at the situation, 1 or 2 plain questions. What happened? What can you manage? That invited truth without fear. People relax when they're treated like adults. Honesty shows up. Next, he translated the rule into human terms. No jargon, no speeches. He said what the law required in a sentence a teenager could repeat on the bus ride home. When rules are clear, excuses collapse.
You look good.
Oh, she's definitely looking for a dismissal here. You're 91 years old. You're still sharp as a tack. What is your...
Now both sides know the ground they're standing on. Then came calibration. He weighed the impact of the penalty against the reality of the person's life. Could a fine be reduced without removing accountability? Could a plan replace a punishment that would break a family? He didn't erase consequences. He resized them so they worked. Accountability you can complete beats punishment you can't survive. He always explained the why. That was the hinge. A decision without reasons feels like power. A decision with reasons feels like justice.
We have very sad news to report. NBC 10 has confirmed that Judge Frank Caprio has died. The retired
When people heard the logic, even hard outcomes landed cleaner. You might not love the result, but you understood it, and understanding is what keeps trust from cracking. He converted punishment into commitments, a smaller fine paired with a deadline, a dismissal paired with a warning that actually meant something, a payment plan that matched paydays. He turned a verdict into next steps and made those steps doable. Compliance went up because dignity stayed intact. He protected the room, no shaming, no theatrics.
Breaking news! No! The world's most loved Judge Frank Caprio has just died! There's no way he died at the age of 8.
He kept the temperature low so people could think, not freeze. Calm spreads, so does respect. When the bench is steady, the whole room steadies with it. Clerks, officers, defendants, everyone. He modeled humility. If a ticket looked wrong, he fixed it. If someone came prepared and honest, he met them halfway. That's how he made discretion safe. Not by being soft, but by being transparent. You knew what mattered to him. Effort, honesty, responsibility.
The internet's favorite judge, Frank Caprio, has sadly passed away at the young age of 88.
And you could aim for it. Finally, he ended with belief. A sentence or two that said, "I see you trying. Keep going." It wasn't a pep talk, it was a handoff. People walked out feeling trusted, which made them more likely to earn that trust. Mercy wasn't a loophole in his courtroom. It was a strategy for better outcomes. Put together, that's the method. Humanize, clarify, calibrate, explain, convert, protect, model, believe. It looks like kindness. It functions like policy.
Some heartbreaking news this morning. Now, popular judge Frank Caprio, whose viral videos in the courtroom made him a global symbol of...
And it's the part of his legacy anyone in authority can copy tomorrow. And he showed that fairness isn't loud and compassion isn't naive. Both are disciplined, which is why his last request wasn't sentimental. It was practical. In the end, he asked for something specific from the rest of us. And that's where we close. When the headlines fade, what remains is a way to treat people. He proved that a courtroom can be both firm and humane, and that mercy, used well, strengthens, not softens, accountability.
This is him doing push-ups after his final treatment last year, and he even announced that he was releasing a book later this year.
His legacy isn't just the stories we replay, it's a playbook anyone can run. Start by seeing the person before the problem. Say the rule in plain language. Size the consequence to reality so it can be completed. Explain the why so trust survives the decision. Protect the tone of the room. Model humility when new facts appear. End with belief instead of bitterness. Done consistently, those habits don't just fix one case. They change a culture. You don't need a robe to use this.
This is the very, very sad news about Mr. Frank Caprio.
A manager deciding a deadline, a teacher handling a missed assignment, a parent facing a hard conversation. All of them can lift the person without lowering the bar. Ask what happened. Name what matters. Offer a next step someone can actually take. Mercy in this frame isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that makes responsibility stick. That's the handoff he left us. Bring a little more compassion into the world and watch outcomes improve. If his clips felt good to watch, it's because they showed a future we can build on ordinary days.
Judge Frank Caprio, the world's kindest judge, has passed away at 88. Frank Caprio, known as the...
So, here's the invitation. Think of the last time someone gave you room to recover and pass that forward today. And if you've got a moment where patience changed the month for you or someone you love, share it. Those are the maps the rest of us can follow. Because in the end, his fame wasn't the point. The choices were small, steady, repeated. That's how a municipal courtroom became a movement, and how his last request becomes our daily work. Up next, we'll close with the single rule he lived by.
So remember me, please.
The internet's favorite judge, Frank Caprio, has sadly passed away at the young age.
And what it looks like when you practice it for 1 week. The lesson he left isn't complicated. Start with the person, state the rule in plain words, size the consequence to real life so it can be completed. Explain the why so trust survives the decision. That rhythm turned a small courtroom into a place where accountability felt possible. And it's a rhythm any of us can use tomorrow. If you want one line to carry out of this, lead with listening. Ask what happened before you decide what should happen. Try it for a week with a coworker, a student, a customer, a family member, and watch how often clarity replaces conflict. That's the quiet rule he practiced for decades, and the reason his work still moves people who never met him. If his message reached you, pass it forward. Share one moment in the comments when someone gave you room to recover or when you chose mercy and it worked. Your story might be the map someone else needs.